Hello, and welcome to the We Get to Do This podcast. My name is Kaylee.
And I'm Jacob.
And we are your co-hosts.
In this show, we're going to dive into all things our lives, from our partnership to romance to entrepreneurship to growing our businesses together, our fitness journeys, and we're going to have a ton of different guests on that relate to what I just said in some way. We're hoping you enjoy the show, and if you do,
please feel free to follow us, leave us a 5-star review on wherever you listen to your podcasts, and enjoy.
And if you don't like the show, tough. Thank you.
Thanks.
10 episodes.
It's a big week.
How do you feel about that?
I can't believe it's already been 10 weeks since we started doing this.
2.5 months.
It's a reminder about how time flies by.
And last week we made a commitment to ourselves and the show that we were going to do 100 episodes before we decide what to or not to do with the show. And before we really decide what it is we're trying to do mission-wise with the show too. We're going to get consistent. 10 episodes down, 90 to go. I'll go quick.
Yeah, I'm just picturing what episode 100 is going to be like. It's the amount that's already changed in the last 10 episodes. Think of what it's going to be like 90 episodes from now.
We'll probably be rich.
We'll probably be millionaires.
If I have a lot of sponsors, Mountain Coast will probably be sponsoring me by then.
That's what we should have talked about today, is 10 things we're manifesting
for
our podcast.
Oh, we still could. We could change it. Just switch to that right now.
We can still do both. We wanted to do a special episode today, being that we're 10 episodes in. And we thought this would be a fun thing to do every 10 episodes or so, to share 10 things that, we've learned, 10 things that we want to share, something along those lines.
10 listener questions, just 10 something every 10 episodes until we hit 100. And then at 100, we'll go 100 somethings. That'll be a very long episode, probably.
Yeah, well, and that's going to be like a big trip because we're going to be rich by that time. So then we can take all of our listeners, all of our loyal listeners, on some kind of trip with us.
Right.
So if you're one of the OG listeners, you better stay with us, because maybe we'll go to Cancun, Puerto Vallarta. I don't know.
Colorado. Anyways, last week we had on some quick announcements here. Last week we had on Todd Stapleton, episode 9. And it was quite a blast. Definitely go check that episode out. That's one of my favorite ones we've recorded so far, personally. I don't know about you, Kaylee, but I think that deserves one more shout out. Check that one out. Our next 2 episodes are both guests as well, so keep an eye out for that. I kind of stole the spotlight for 2 episodes, so you're going to hear my voice a little bit more than Kaylee's for 2 weeks. So I'm sure listener count will drop by 50% at least.
Whatever.
So
I'll be back.
We'll have to have Kaylee. She's working on some people right now to have on the pod. So, be ready for that. And if you are listening right now, we say this at the end of every show, but our Spotify reviews are up to, I think, 3. I don't know what we have on Apple. I think still 0. But we know we're getting at least 30 listens per episode. And the last episode had over 40, I think.
Yeah, we had more than 30. So
there's been a couple that have had over 40. And so there's at least 30 of you that are listening pretty consistently. So if you're on YouTube, subscribe, throw a like, throw a comment on the video if you want, or on the channel. That'd be awesome. If you're on Apple, you can subscribe to the show there, and you can also comment as well and like us and leave 5 stars. That would help us so much. Or if you're on Spotify, on the main We Get to Do This page, if you click the 3 dots, there's a little thing that says leave a review, and you just click 5 stars. It's the easiest thing in the world. And we've talked about this a lot, but reviews help so much, both for our businesses and for the show. And we just really, really, really appreciate it. So
it's a completely free way to support us. And we will appreciate you forever so that we can get to 100 episodes.
Any other announcements?
I don't think so. It's a shameless plug.
That was not, yeah.
Follow us.
Follow us on Instagram too.
It's free.
What are we talking about? What are our 10 things today, Kaylee?
So today we were brainstorming 10 things we wanted to talk about for our first 10. And we decided to do 10 things that we've learned so far about having our own podcast and starting a podcast. So 10 things that we've learned in the last 2.5 months since we started this, which doesn't seem like that long of time, but I feel like we've both learned a very good amount in that time.
Yeah, I feel like if we did this exact episode 10 episodes from now, there would be 5 different things each.
Absolutely.
Because I don't know. Yeah, this will be fun.
I think that's what I was just going to say. I think that's one of the reasons why this podcast has been fun is because we're just constantly learning, and it's just another growth thing for us. And every time, like you said, we're going to have that many more things to share.
Yeah. Oh, and we got lighting.
Oh, yeah, we have new lights.
We didn't shout that out. So if you're on YouTube, check out our lights. Look at this. Look how crisp I look. Look at my skin.
Look at that complexion.
I know. It's pretty wild. You can see my gray hairs coming in, too.
We were able to check if we had anything stuck in our teeth earlier,
Before when we started, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're on YouTube, that's another treat you can find at the beginning of this video. But I'll start with my first thing that I've learned. That's how fast a week goes by. Originally, we were figuring out if we should do, every other week, once a month. And we decided to go all in with once a week. And I already knew how fast a week goes by. And now it's, wow, a week goes by so fast. And I don't realize how often we're gone and how many evening things that we have where we get home after 8 p.m. Which means that fitting this in, we have to be pretty strategic in when we do it. Right now it's 1 p.m. on a Tuesday that we both happen to have an hour off where we could record this together. But it's just been a lot of fitting it into evenings, afternoons, weekends, kind of wherever we can fit it in. And I feel like that's life with a lot of people, especially if you have kids. Just figuring out there's no best time to do these things or best way to do it. And I think we'll continue to figure out how to record and what works best for us. But yeah, weeks. Time goes by so fast, you guys. It's crazy.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's been pretty wild to see. Before we know it, it's Sunday night again, and we go, oh, shoot, we got to record a podcast right now. Otherwise, we're not getting this recorded by Wednesday morning.
Yep.
But I also feel as though if we done every other week, it would have actually been easier for it to fall off. I see that with podcasters all the time where they're like, I'm going to start with every other week. And I don't know, I just feel like the less of a commitment you have to something, the easier it is to drop that from your list. So with us we're doing this once a week and we're going to commit to it. It was we have to do this every week. You just got to get it in. So,
well, then it's always on the forefront of your mind, like you're saying, versus if it was every 2 weeks, we'd go a week and a half and then it'd be, oh, we need to get this in again.
Yeah.
Versus right now, it's every few days. It's like, okay, we need to get back on it again. Yep.
My first thing, kind of in line with that, I wrote, podcasts are a lot of work. The level, the entry to, barrier, level of barrier, whatever, I'm trying to say.
The
barrier of entry, that's what I'm trying to say, is very low. Anyone can go and download Zencaster, which is what we use, and just start making a podcast. It's very, very easy to make a podcast. But
you still need to pay, but you can download it.
But the level 1 on here, I don't think was that crazy expensive. The initial step for making a podcast is pretty easy. It's after that. That's been a lot more work than I thought it would be because, like you were just saying, 1 a week goes by so fast. So actually making the content, it's planning to make the content. That's a lot of work. The doing it, like when we're sitting here, this is going to be 30 minutes, right? And it's not that hard. But then the before, the prep, what people didn't just see is us sitting on the couches for 40 minutes trying to figure out what we were going to do for this episode, and then afterwards us scrambling to get the episode live and loaded and everything, right? And then in addition to that, if you want to make it somewhat successful, it's now you got to get an Instagram page for it. You got to tell everyone about it on Facebook, right? And you got to get a mic so you sound a little better. Then we got to get lights so the lighting looks decent and it doesn't look like we're scrubs, So yeah, it's a lot of work. I get why people don't stick with it.
Yeah, and I think at the beginning, if you are deciding to start a podcast, just figuring out what your goals are. How successful do you want it to be? Do you want it to look good? Do you want people to know about it? Do you plan on marketing it? Because if you want it to be more successful, you are going to need more of the equipment. And then that is more of an investment of time and money.
Right. Yeah. And I think, on that vein too, a lot of people start podcasts or any podcast specifically, and they go, I want to be the next big podcaster. And that's not our goal. Like we didn't start the podcast with the intention of blowing up a podcast. We started the podcast with the intention of making it so people that are already connected to us can become more connected to us. That was our intention. And I feel as though that's going to help us in the long run too, because I was hoping for like 10 listens those first episodes and we were getting like 30, so that's cool. And it's a lot better than trying to get 100 plus and then being discouraged when you're not getting, the listeners.
Right.
And people that are listening, and this is one of my points I'll talk about later, but the people that are listening are people that want to care, like that care and want to listen.
Yeah.
So that's mine.
And so my second one along those lines too is how much I respect content creators kind of any content creator, but especially the ones that put out so much content and have episodes every couple days that I see and that are blowing up, putting out on YouTube and Instagram. And it's impressive. And I think we see the people who quote blow up typically have a team at that point. And I get why they have that, why they have sound people, video people, because it is a lot of work and it is a lot of time. But also, they didn't start out like that. Most people started out just like we are, very grassroots in our living room with our makeshift studio here. And which again will hopefully change by the time we're at 100 here. But yeah, I just have a lot of respect for content creators out there because it's not easy, and it's a very steep and quick learning curve as well. We have Jacob taking some behind the scenes footage over here.
Always getting content.
See, we're our own film crew. We're our own sound people. We're our own social media people, marketers. You have to do it all at the beginning.
My second one, again, stemming from what you said a little bit, is I remember a while ago you told me that you were watching, I don't remember who it was, someone on YouTube. And I remember you saying, or Instagram, whatever, and you went, you weren't discrediting them, but you were saying, I feel as though the only difference between what this person is doing right now and me specifically at the time you were talking about, but us, whatever, was that they're putting it on YouTube. And I think that, it kind of stems off of what you were just saying with a lot of content creation is just being super, super consistent. Now we haven't made it, I guess, content wise by any means. And again, the goal with our content isn't necessarily to become influencers. It's to help the people that already follow us, right? And create more content for that person. But I think that everyone has a message worth sharing. And so my specific number 2 is everyone has a message worth sharing. And we have a message worth sharing specifically. The difference between, content creators and us 8.5 weeks ago was that we weren't sharing it. So I want to share our message, essentially. And I think that we have a message worth sharing, and that is that we get to do this. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that was really good. I'm inspired.
Number 2. That's my second.
Well, and then my third, going along with that, is that how being vulnerable and putting yourself out there can help you relate to others and connect with people. And we were at dinner with some friends last week, and it was funny because one of the people there, she had listened to all of our episodes recently and was just rattling off things about us.
Which we didn't know. That was awesome.
Yeah, it was.
So if you're listening right now, Jess, thank you.
Our number one fan.
Number one fan.
But those are things that, I mean, yes, ideally will come up in natural conversation with people, but that doesn't always happen. And anyways, just from other messages and stuff we've gotten from people after our episodes saying, you know, I've felt this before, or I understand what you're saying. And I just think podcasts can be a very good way of connecting with others. And if we're not putting information out there, and if we're not talking to each other, it's hard to connect. And I think in our society today, when a lot of it is based off of social media and things like that, I think this is just a very good way for us to be our true selves. And people have said that it feels like they're just having a conversation with us. And I like that because we're not putting on a show. Like, we're two very real humans who are just doing their best every single day and trying to be better versions of ourselves.
Right.
And by doing that, we're going to attract the right people that we want in our lives.
Yeah, and I've gotten pretty comfortable with really being my true self in front of a camera and on social media. Like, I care so much less about what the wrong people think about me, if that makes sense, and being judged by the people that aren't those that I'm trying to connect with anyways. I feel like I've gotten just a lot better at like letting go of that.
Well, that's a life lesson too. You know, do what you want.
Yeah, it is. Good point. Wow. You're right.
See, we're learning.
That could have been one of my reasons, but it wasn't. Number 3 for me was I wrote, we have supporters, and those are our people, which is kind of what I was just saying, actually. Funny. Okay, well, so I thought it was really cool that there have been multiple people that have come up to us either in the gym or texted us or whatever and said, I think it's really cool what you're doing and that you're putting yourself out there. And I think you and I are doing that with a lot of things, not just this podcast. But a lot of people have talked about this podcast, and then they've said, I've been listening to your podcast, from people that I would not have expected to hear that from. I've heard that from multiple people now. And I think that's really, really cool. And I think that it just, quite frankly, learning that people support us, I think is valuable. And I don't think there's anything wrong with accepting that. I think it's good. We want supporters. Again, we want people leaving us reviews and stuff. It keeps us going, you know, and I'm grateful for it.
Well, and my 4th is you need your people. And when we did start this, like you said, we were going to be excited if we had 10 listeners. And at the beginning, we were kind of doing it, like you said, to connect with people, but it was more of also for us, like, it's just good practice in talking to other people. However, we probably wouldn't still be on episode 10. We probably wouldn't have this goal of 100 if we had, one person listening, or if nobody was saying anything. Like, it would just change things. And so mine is just being grateful for the people that do support us and for our community, because it does make a difference. And I think surrounding yourself with humans that you like goes a long ways. And it's just been cool to see this with the podcast, like you were just saying.
Yeah, and I think that's partly figuring out what our streams, bridges, whatever, of content should be too. and figuring out where people are listening or watching or reading. Because, for example, blogs for me, no one is looking at. Like I had my most recent blog had 0 views, not a single view. And these podcast episodes get 30 or so right now. The emails that we send out, both of us, we get like 50 plus opens on, and our email lists are like 80, 70, whatever they are. The Reels, Instagram, Facebook, things like that, people interact with, fairly a good amount. So I think part of it is, us testing waters and figuring out what works for us and figuring out where people like to gain information from us too. My 4th one, it takes conscious practice and reps to stop using filler words. A little bit of a fun one. I think that it was amazing when we first started how much we both were saying but, like, etc. And not that we don't say that stuff now, but as we've gotten more comfortable, I think both of us have gotten better at taking pauses like that. And being okay creating some silences and spaces in our communication on the podcast, but also then while we're talking to people. And both of us have done seminars or led community calls and whatnot since we started the podcast too. And I think that it's drastically changed how we're talking on those. And I think on the podcast specifically, we've had to get comfortable. That's one thing I can work on, not having my hand in front of me. On the podcast, though, we've gotten comfortable just messing up, quite frankly. Like I'm very okay stumbling over my words here and using filler words if I, absolutely need to, right? And practicing talking, essentially. And 1, that's made me a better communicator. It's made both of us a better communicator. But then 2, that I have brought to those other settings. Being okay messing up in those settings. And it's made me a better communicator in those settings, I'd say, as well. Mm-hmm. But it's lots of reps and practice, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and these podcasts are very clearly unedited. We're not going back, because again, we don't have a team of producers to go and cut out filler words. And when we mess up, you're getting the whole real and raw version of ourselves on this pod.
Including teeth.
Including stuff in our teeth. And I think that just helps us to be hopefully more relatable to people, because most people are using filler words. And because it's even funny when I talk to somebody about how we use filler words and how I say like a lot and how I know that. And even as I'm describing that, I'll be using the word like as I'm talking to them. It's like, why am I still doing that? But it just makes you more aware of those things. So again, it's just the practice part of it. And it's been fun to learn more and be able to take this into our work and take it into real life. So if you're listening now and you didn't listen to the first 5, 6, 7 episodes, you've come a long ways already, I feel like. My last one, so this will be one of the 9th thing that we've learned. That's how doing business with your partner means talking about business with your partner constantly, and how our lives have become just a lot about our business and work. And it kind of was already like that before, just because of the work that we do and being entrepreneurs. We're constantly working, and, we're constantly answering emails because we're customer service for ourselves. We're the salespeople. We're constantly trying to think of content to put out, what times the content would be good to go out. Then we're in person, and then we share a lot of clients as well, and coming up with plans together. And I think this is just another thing that just made it more about work. And I think this is something that a lot of couples who do work together, that they experience. And I think this is something we're going to need to continue working on, but just how to, I don't even know if it needs to be to separate work and quote life, because we enjoy what we do. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing all of this. It'd be pretty tough if we didn't enjoy our jobs and our careers. But just finding a way to make it also about each other and to make sure we're always putting each other first and not just the work, and having fun in there too.
I agree. I'm excited to see how we develop that side of things.
Same. More date nights. That's a note to me. I'm not the best with planning that. I admit it. I see your eyebrows raising. I get it.
Number 10. My number 5. From episode 9. People change for 2 reasons: inspiration or desperation. I really liked that.
Todd Stevelton, folks.
Episode 9. I'm not going to go into it super deep. You can go listen to episode 9, but I liked that a lot. Mm-hmm. And he specifically said, if you're training for a marathon, you're likely inspired. But if you have a knee problem that's prohibiting you from finishing that marathon or finishing the training of the marathon, you're likely desperate. And we get to see both. And I think thinking about which one you are is important. Mm-hmm. That's my 5th, and that's number 10. And this is episode 10 of We Get to Do This.
I'm excited for 20 already.
Yeah. If you have any ideas of what you want to hear on episode 20, let us know. The next 2 episodes.
Such as, 10 things Jacob loves about Kaylee.
I'm here for it. If you guys want me to rattle them off, I got a long list. And we're going to have to wait till 1,000 to do that.
Whatever.
I'll rattle 1,000 things off for you.
Whatever.
Episode 10, y'all. We get to do this.
Thanks for listening.
10 things we've learned. We get to do this. Jacob and
I'm Kaylee.
Thank you. Please leave a review, rating, 5 stars.
Thanks for listening.
Peace.